योगेन चित्तस्य पदेन वाचां मलं शरीरस्य च वैद्यकेन योपाकरोत्तं प्रवरं मुनीनां पतञ्जलिं प्राञ्जलिरानतोऽस्मि आबाहुपुरुषाकारं शङ्खचक्रासितारिणं सहस्रशिरसं श्वेतं प्रणमामि पतञ्जलिं। गुरुर्ब्रह्मा गुरुर्विष्णु गुरुर्देवो महेश्वरः गुरुः साक्षात् परब्रह्म तस्मै श्री गुरवे नमः। हरि ओम। So last time we saw the first sutra where we learnt about Kriya Yoga. So we'll hear a little bit more about Kriya Yoga, then proceed to the next one.
We need to be clear about Kriya Yoga and Kriya Yogi. What is Kriya Yoga and who is a Kriya Yogi? Because he is said to be Madhyamadhikari, a yogi on middle hierarchy. And therefore his yoga is being mentioned in the Sadhana Pada, the precept on means, and the sutra is actually characterizing by its implied purport as to what is Kriya Yoga and what is Kriya Yogi. We need to be little clear about it. Because today we are familiar with a school and cult called Kriya Yoga. And we might refer the Kriya Yoga to the Shat Kriyas of Hatha Yoga. Neti, Dhauti, Basti, Kapalbhati, Tratak, Uddiyana. So Shat Kriyas are mentioned in the Hatha Yoga text. So those are called Kriyas. So there can be a confusion for one that maybe Kriya Yoga has reference to that. However, that is not the case. This is a technical term of Patanjali, and he has elaborated on it. In following sutra you will be coming to know what is Kriya Yoga, why Kriya Yoga has to be done. Then you will know what is Kriya Yoga also. What is this Kriya Yoga and what is Kriya Yogi? We need to be little crystallize these concepts, and therefore I will be taking few minutes here now. Now, what is Kriya Yoga? Kriya Yogi and Kriya Yoga. Kriya Yogi is one who has gone through the Ashtanga aspects of yoga, who has attained Ashtanga Yoga from Yama Niyamas to Samadhi. All the Ashtangas have been accomplished. He has attained the Ashtangas. And is that only the qualification that after your Ashtanga is accomplished, that you will be stepping into Kriya Yogic step or stage? No, the implication is that if you are profound and proficient in Ashtanga Yoga, it implies that you are also proficient, profound in the four yogs which are mentioned in the Adhyatma. As I said last time, Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. So these four yogas are integral to Patanjali's scheme of yoga, which he makes it clear in the second chapter when he describes Kriya Yoga, the concept of Kriya Yoga. So far in the first chapter we did not get any clue to something as Jnana Yoga, something as Karma Yoga, something as Bhakti Yoga, something as Dhyana Yoga. So, who is this Kriya Yogi? Say for instance, if you have looked into Bhagavad Gita, every chapter of Bhagavad Gita is a yoga, precept on yoga. Starting from Arjuna Vishada Yoga to Sankhya Yoga, to Karma Yoga, to Karma Sannyasa Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, 6th chapter Dhyana Yoga. Every chapter is a yoga. And Bhagavad Gita is a wonderful treatise on all the 4 aspects of yoga. It's a complete and wonderful treatise which circumscribes all the 4 yogas. Now here is the case like this. We will be reading Bhagavad Gita. There is someone who reads Bhagavad Gita to know what is Bhagavad Gita. There are some people who will claim that I have understood Bhagavad Gita. It's not that I have lack of understanding. I understand every verse of it. I have no problem with every verse. I know the meaning of every verse. I can perhaps even explain every verse. So there are some people like you and me who commence reading Bhagavad Gita. Somebody will have read Bhagavad Gita. Somebody can talk on Bhagavad Gita. Somebody can give speech on Bhagavad Gita. Somebody can question, clear any doubt of anyone in Bhagavad Gita. Okay, so there are some people who teach Bhagavad Gita. There are some people who speak on Bhagavad Gita, who give talks on Bhagavad Gita, elaborate talks on Bhagavad Gita. Some of them can even answer any doubt for anyone in the matters of Bhagavad Gita. But then there is someone who lives Bhagavad Gita. These are the texts where you can be living. If you read a novel, you don't live a novel. If you read a fiction, there is no need for you to live friction. But what are the spiritual texts? There is something for you to live. So one who lives Bhagavad Gita is a Kriya Yogi. One who speaks on Bhagavad Gita, gives elaborate talks on Bhagavad Gita, 10-day session, 1-month session, 6-month session, 1-year session, doesn't necessarily live Bhagavad Gita. One who teaches doesn't necessarily live Bhagavad Gita. But there is a grade, there is a level who lives Bhagavad Gita. The precepts are so imbibed that he starts living Bhagavad Gita. So then there is Jnana Yoga. There are some people who will speak on Jnana Yoga. They will tell you what is Jnana Yoga, what are the precepts of Jnana Yoga, what is the subject matter of Jnana Yoga, what is the purport of Jnana Yoga. Somebody will talk, somebody will explain, somebody will teach, somebody will profess. But there can be someone who really lives. Now what is Jnana Yoga? Bhagavad Gita 2nd chapter, it tells you about Prakriti and Purusha, the material entity and the sentient spiritual entity. What are these entities? This universe is for these 2 entities, by these 2 entities. So that is Jnana Yoga, which tells you about what is matter, what is supramatter, what is inframatter, what is supramatter, what is transmatter, etc., etc. Metaphysics. It deals with metaphysics. 2nd chapter tells you that Atma cannot be killed, Atma cannot be burnt, Atma cannot be drenched, wetted, cut, killed. Atma cannot be killed, nor Atma kills. Now, in our understanding of our so-called spiritual entity, we think we take birth and we die. We have birth, growth, decay, death. So this is what we feel about ourselves. And then I can kill someone, I can be killed by someone. I will die, I can kill someone, and everyone will die. So this is our experience, this is our knowledge about the realities, our plane of realities. That somebody takes birth, all of us have taken birth, all of us are going to die. But Bhagavad Gita tells in the 2nd chapter that's not the case. It neither kills nor can be killed. It neither eats nor sleeps nor can be eaten. So this is the entity which Jnana Yoga tells us. So if you look into metaphysics, you will come to know about that we are all immortals. We are not men and women, we are just pure beings. We don't have class, caste, creed, gender, status, stature, etc. These are all the vestiges. We are all wearing clothes of all this. These are delimitations. That's what somebody is man, somebody is woman, somebody is young, somebody is old. Atma has no age. It is ageless. But we have age. Why? Because our clothes have age. Our clothes in the form of this textile, clothes in the form of body, in the form of flesh, in the form of mind, in the form of psyche, it has all age. So Jnana Yoga has certain precepts which deals with metaphysics, and one who is living Jnana Yoga is a Kriya Yogi. Karma Yoga, we will know what is Karma Yoga if you read Bhagavad Gita. I can give a talk on Karma Yoga. I can write a book on Karma Yoga. But there is someone who lives Karma Yoga. There is someone who lives Dhyana Yoga. Now what is Dhyana Yoga? Bhagavad Gita 6th chapter, there is no Shirshasana, Sarvangasana, Trikonasana, Parshakonasana, Viprit Karne, Halasana. Yet it is yoga. What is that yoga? Dhyana Yoga. So someone will tell you what Dhyana Yoga is. Someone will write a book on Dhyana Yoga. Some will profess, give talk, give series of talks on Dhyana Yoga. But there is someone who can live Dhyana Yoga. One who lives Dhyana Yoga is characterized in Bhagavad Gita. How is he? 18th chapter, it describes. There are verses from 55 onwards. Buddhi Vishuddha
Yukto.
Dhruti Atmanam Niyamya cha Shabdadin Vishayan Tyaktva Raga Dvesha Vidasya cha Vivakta Sevi Lagvashi Yat Vakaya Manasa Dhyana Yogo Paro Nityam Vairagyam Samupashridataha Ahankaram Balam Darpam Kamam Krodam Parigram Vimuchya Nirmama Shanta Brahma Bhujaya Kalpate Brahma Bhuta Prasannata na shochati na kankshati samah sarveshu bhuteshu mad bhakti labate param. That is Dhyana Yogi's characteristic. So we are all seekers of Dhyana Yoga. Somebody teaches Dhyana Yoga. Somebody lives Dhyana Yoga. One who lives is characterized in Bhagavad Gita. The Jnani is characterized in Bhagavad Gita called in the second chapter, Sthita Prajna Darshan, Gunatita, Bhakti Yogi has been described in Bhagavad Gita. So look into the descriptions in Bhagavad Gita. You will come to know Dhyana Yogi characterized, Jnana Yogi characterized, Karma Yogi characterized, Bhakti Yogi characterized. So look into Bhagavad Gita, you will get characteristics of these yogis. They live Jnana, Dhyana, Karma, Bhakti. He is Kriya Yogi. One who lives all the four yogas is Kriya Yogi. And the principles on which he lives, that is Kriya Yoga. All principles of Jnana Yoga, Nitya Nitya Vivek, Sukha Dukkha Vivek, Atmanatma Vivek. He lives on those all discriminations. Not just discriminates. His life is characterized by discrimination. So someone like a saint who is accomplished yogi, he is Kriya Yogi. He lives yoga, not just knows yoga. He not only practices yoga, he lives yoga. You and me practice yoga, is that right? Do we live yoga? Once the practice is over in 1 or 2 hours, what are we? We are again those worms. We are all caterpillars of the world. Consume this, consume that, eat this, eat that, enjoy this, enjoy that. Go by tendencies of the flesh. So, Kriya Yogi is that. And Kriya Yoga is that. Bhagavad Gita describes, look into it, Karma Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, Jnana Yoga. It also describes Karma Yogi, Janakadi, Karma Yogis. So there is characterized how a Jnana Karma Yogi is, how Dhyana Yogi is, how Bhakti Yogi is, how Dhyana Yogi is. A Dhyana Yogi is Gunatita. Because in Dhyana Yoga we are made aware of Sattva Rajatama and we want to transcend Sattva Rajatama. So Gunatita is also Dhyana Yogi. 18th chapter description is also Dhyana Yogi. Sthita Prajna is Jnana Yogi. So look into Bhagavad Gita, you will get to know who is a Jnana Yogi, Karma Yogi, Dhyana Yogi, Bhakti Yogi. You will also know what is Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga. He is personification of the 4 yogas. He is Kriya Yogi. A Kriya Yogi doesn't practice anything because he is accomplished. A Kriya Yogi may not be getting onto the head. For peace of mind, will not get into Viprit Karani. Like someone like Jnaneshwar, it is needless to deem or hold that sometimes he went on the head. He did his Ashtanga Yoga. When he was at Ashtanga Yoga, he went all through this. However, having reached the stage, now it is not necessary that he should get onto the head. He can get Shirshasana biochemistry by not going to Shirshasana. He has other technology as his fingertips. He doesn't do half halasana to quieten the mind. You and me go to half halasana to quieten the mind. You and me do Janu Shirshasana to quieten the mind. So he has gone through. It's not that he has never done. He has gone through Ashtanga Yoga, therefore he has gone through all that. Now he doesn't need to do that. It's a qualification. So that is a Kriya Yogi. The seers, sages, rishis, munis, it is not necessary to expect that every rishi muni went on the head, did Sarvangasana, Halasana, Viprit Karani. Some of them might have done. Because there are again different levels. You can't be arguing whether Vasishtha did Shirshasana or Vishwamitra did Shirshasana. Many of you might think Vishwamitra did Vishwamitrasana. No, not necessary. It was, asana is named after Vishwamitra. It doesn't mean that he was in austerity, did tapas. In Vishwamitrasana he stayed for 12 hours and 12 days and 12 months and 12 years. No. It is named after him. Vasishthasana, Vishwamitrasana, Vamadevasana. It's not that these sages were doing tapas. So Kriya Yogi doesn't do tapas. His life is tapasvi's life. He doesn't do Swadhyay. He is personification of Swadhyay. You and me do Swadhyay. You and me do self-study. He is personified Swadhyayi. He is personified Ishvara Pranidhan. He doesn't go to temples and puja room and do some worship necessarily. He doesn't perform austerities. His life is austere. So that is Kriya Yogi, that is Kriya Yoga. So I have made some attempt for you to crystallize what is Kriya Yoga and Kriya Yogi. Hope that is sufficient.
Since we have touched on this, before going to the next sutra, I'll quote from some of the other Upanishads and some of my notes. So there's one nice mantra from the Trishiki Brahmana Upanishad. It says, Jnana Yoga Karma Yoga iti yogo dvidhamataha kriya yogam matedinam shruno brahmana sattama. So the Jnana and Karma, right? These have been two paths that have been seen from very ancient times. And Kriya Yoga again is brought in here as combining the two. And in the commentary it is said, Ishvararadhana dhiya nishkama karma anushtanam. Okay, that is Karma Yoga. So that brings in Karma Yoga and Ishvara Pranidhana. And we see that this train of thought of Kriya Yoga is coming right from the Upanishads. And it sort of combines Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga and Bhakti Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, as he said. Again, Dvau Kramo Chittanashasya Yogo Jnanam Munishwara. So Chittanasham, as we saw in the first chapter, in the end, the Chitta gets dissolved into the Mula Prakriti. Right? So that is Kaivalya or liberation and so on. So Dvau Kramo, there are two sort of sequences, Yogo Jnanam, Yoga and Jnanam. Yogastu Vrittirodo hi Jnanam Samyak Avekshanam. So again it has to be combined. So the Yoga, that sequence is about Vrittirodo. Okay, the Manovritti have to fade away. Jnanam Samyak Avekshanam. So Jnanam is about the proper vision. So that goes to vidya. We'll see avidya and kleshas. So being able to understand the truth correctly as it is. That is samyak avekshanam, seeing things in their true form. So that is jnanam. Tasmin nirodate nunam upashantam mano bhavet manaspandopasantyayam samsara praviliyate. Okay, so in this situation with the jnanam, which is countering avidya, and the yoga, which is sort of bringing about the fading away of vritti, the mana becomes upashanta. So the mana's adhikara sort of fades away. We have seen that, chittasya adhikara. So the role of the chitta, the prominent role, goes away, the chitta becomes shanta, and when the chitta goes away, the samsara itself fades away as far as that purusha is concerned. Right? That
samsara means mundanity, fades away. Mundanity doesn't stick to him.
In fact, there is a even more emphatic thing that says, chitte chalati samsaro nishchalam moksha uchyate. Okay, so as long as the chitta is active, there is this world and a prapancha. Nishchalam moksha uchyate. Once the chitta stops functioning, that is moksha. Tasmat chittam sthiri kuryat prajnaya paraya vidhe. Therefore, the chitta is to be made steady. Sthiri kuryat. Okay, so the activity of the chitta has to be stopped. How? Prajnaya paraya vidhe. The para prajna. We've already seen the Adhyatma Prasada and the Ritambara Prajna. Through that, the chitta's activity is to be sort of attenuated and then stopped. Chittam karanam arthanam tasmin sati jagatrayam. So all the arthas, which are objects of the senses, the chittam karanam arthanam, it is the chitta that is bringing it about. Okay? Tasmin sati jagatrayam. When that is there, the entire world is there. Tasmin kshine jagat kshinam. When that fades away, the world fades away. Okay? Tasmin kshine jagat kshinam tat chikitsyam prayatnataha. So that is to be investigated. So that is what the Upanishad is saying there. So we are seeing this whole stream of how, like in Bhagavad Gita, these jnana and yoga come together, and that is, as he is saying, that is where the Kriya Yoga finds its place. In fact, again, one more very beautiful thing from, again, one of the Upanishads. It says, Tasmad dosha vinashartham upayam kathayamite yogahinam katham jnanam mokshadam bhavati dhruvam. Yogahinam katham dhyanam. When there is no yoga, how can jnana bring about moksha? Okay, so the yoga is a fundamental constituent. Without that, jnana cannot bring about its fruit. Right? So it, in some sense, it cannot serve its purpose. So yogahinam katham jnanam mokshadam bhavati dhruvam. Okay. So then is jnana necessary? So the next line says, yogopi jnanahinastu nakshamo moksha karmani. Yoga also, without jnana, is not capable, nakshamo, moksha karmani, to do the things that are necessary for moksha. Right? Even the steps cannot be walked if there is just yoga without jnanam. So yogopi jnanahinastu nakshamo moksha karmani tasmad jnanam cha yogam cha mumukshu drudam abhyaset. Therefore, any mumukshu means the one who wants moksha. Okay, mukti richa is mumukshu. So any mumukshu has to drudam abhyaset, steadfastly study both tasma jnanam cha yogam cha. So the yoga with the background of jnana and the jnana with the practice of yoga together only, okay, it clearly says, can bring about the final state that we are looking for.
So if you look into discourses on yoga, I have described there Jnana Yoga, Karma Yoga, Dhyana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga, and all various branches of Dhyana Yoga, such as Japa Yoga, Mantra Yoga, Laya Yoga, Hatha Yoga, Raja Yoga, Kundalini Yoga. So the text has briefly described each of these yogas, the discourses on yoga. So you'll be able to crystallize what are these different yogas. And Patanjali's scheme is all integration of all these yogas. It's not just Patanjali is just speaking on Dhyana Yoga. Jnana Yoga is part of Patanjali. Karma Yoga is part of Patanjali. Sarva Karmanam Parama Kuruvarpanam is Karma Yoga. So every yoga comes in Patanjali's yoga. It's a foundational study. Therefore, you will find roots of all yogas in Ashtanga Yoga. and Patanjali's yoga of Kriya Yoga, and then Patanjali's yoga of Samadhi Yoga. 3 yogas are mentioned in Patanjali's text. Of the best, supreme most qualified, middly qualified, and lowly qualified. So there are 3 yogas in Patanjali's scheme. And every kind of yoga comes in. You name any yoga. Japa yoga, Nama yoga, Nada yoga, Hatha yoga, Raj yoga, Mantra yoga, Laya yoga, Jnana yoga, Karma yoga, Bhakti yoga. Every yoga comes in. And that's why in the discourse on yoga, I have briefly described just as an information to you as to what these yogas are.
Okay, so let's start on the second sutra. So first one, we saw tapaswadhyaya ishvara pranidhanani kriya yoga. We saw the different shades of tapa. Then we saw what is swadhyaya. Ishvara pranidhanam we saw, but we had already seen in the first chapter. Now the second sutra elaborates further on kriya yoga, mostly from a angle of what is the purpose and how does it achieve it. Okay. So Vyasa begins by saying Sahi Kriya Yoga. So this is about Kriya Yoga. Samadhi Bhavanarthaha Klesha Tanukaranarthascha. Okay. So there are 2 qualifications describing words, Visheshanam, adjectives given to Kriya Yoga. One is Samadhi Bhavanarthaha Kriya Yoga. Klesha Tanukaranarthaha Kriya Yoga. So it achieves 2 things. Samadhi Bhavanam. So bringing about, manifesting Samadhi. Kriya Yoga achieves that, and that is the purpose. Klesha Tanukaranam. So the kleshas, so we'll see in detail. So kleshas is another very interesting topic. In that context, we should also discuss how we saw antarayas in the first chapter. So there is antaraya and there is klesha, and we have to understand the role of both. So klesha tanukaranam. Tanukaranam means the attenuation, make them fade away or sort of overcome. So klesha tarunakaranaarthaha kriya yoga. So these are 2 ways, in the 2 sort of qualifying words for kriya yoga. Now let's look at what Vyasa says. So this was the sutra. Now Vyasa has the bhashya on that. So Vyasa says, Sahi asevyamanaha samadhim bhavayati kleshanscha pratanu karoti. Sa, which means the yogi, asevyamanaha, practicing, following, inculcating kriya yoga, samadhim bhavayati. So he manifests, brings about samadhi. Kleshanscha pratanu karoti. So the kleshas, avidya and so on, which we'll see, which sort of come in the way of yoga, right? So they are the troublemakers in some sense. The klesha is a word that means trouble or problem, right? So kleshas are troublemakers. So kriya yoga, it pratanu karoti. So he sort of makes them quiet. It makes the troublemakers quiet in that sense. So again, if we were to relate this to tapaswadhyaya ishvara pranidhana, we can see that samadhi bhavanam relates more towards tapa and ishvara pranidhana. Klesha tanukaranam, because it has to counter avidya, it comes about through swadhyaya and ishvara pranidhana. Of course, even in the first, jnanam is essential, so swadhyaya helps. In klesha tanukaranam also, the tapa is required, because only through tapa does jnana really fructify. Okay, now what happens? Pratanukrutan kleshan prasankhyanaagnina dagda bija kalpan aprasava dharminaha karishyati iti. Okay, so here what is saying, what is the point of the pratanukaranam of the kleshas, right? So when we say they are attenuated, they are made to fade away and so on, what is the point of that? So pratanukrutan kleshan prasankhyanaagnina. Prasankhyanam means viveka khyati. Okay, what is viveka khyati? The sattva purusha anyata khyati. So the chitta in its essential form, purely sattvic form, is still different from the purusha. That direct perception and understanding in sort of yogika pratyaksha. Okay, so direct understanding and realization of that is the ultimate jnanam, and that is what is prasankhyanam. Okay, when that prasankhyanam is reached, at that point, as we have seen, the true state of reality is fully understood. So in that state, what happens to these kleshas? So the attenuated kleshas, pratanukrutan kleshan, dagda bija kalpa. So what happens is, it is like the seed that is burnt. Okay, so it's like the seed burnt by the fire of knowledge. Okay, it cannot sprout again. So that is the point. So the klesha will never manifest. So the trouble is sort of permanently vanquished. So dagda bija kalpan aprasava dharminaha. So now their dharma means characteristic. Dharma has multiple meanings. One of the meanings, especially in the Nyaya Shastra and so on, is sort of a characteristic of the substance. So now what becomes the characteristics? Aprasava dharminaha. So the kleshas are such that they cannot deliver, they cannot fructify anymore. Okay, so they become in some sense barren. Okay, there is no sprout that comes. So aprasava dharminaha karishyati. So that is how the pratanukaranam helps by killing the kleshas forever, so that they won't come back again. Right? They won't rise again. Tesham tanukaranat punaha kleshaihi aparamrishta sattva purushanyata khyatihi sukshma prajna samaptadikara pratiprasavaya kalpishyata iti. So in 2 lines, this is taken the entire path of yoga right to Kaivalya. So what it is saying is, Tesham tanukaranat. Okay, so when they are overcome, when they are attenuated, who? The kleshas, right? So when the kleshas are attenuated, what happens? Punaha. So again, for emphasis, kleshaihi aparamrishta. Okay, so aparamrishta is again an adjective or describing word for the prajna. Okay, so what is the nature of the prajna? It is a kleshaihi aparamrishta prajna. So the prajna, or the sort of the state of the chitta, the knowledge state, right, of the chitta, the intelligent state of the chitta is such that it is kleshaihi aparamrishta, untouched by the kleshas. Okay. What is klesha? Avidya. So essentially it is untouched by avidya. Avidya is about incorrect understanding. Okay. So it is a combination of incomplete understanding and incorrect understanding. It is untouched by that. Okay, the prajna. So kleshaihi aparamrishta. Now what is the nature of that prajna? Sattva purushanyata khyatihi. So it is seeing the ultimate reality of the chitta unpolluted by rajatama, the pure sattvic state of the chitta. Okay, so the first level is already gone. The prapancha, the pollutants, the rajatama, mala, that is already gone. The sattva, sattvic state of the chitta has been realized. One step beyond that, even the sattvic state is different from the purusha, right? That is, it is like distinguishing two objects in a completely dark room, right, by vision. So in general it is not possible because everything is dark. Similarly, the sattva state of the chitta is purely reflecting the purusha. So they may appear as one. When they appear as one, it is avidya. And that exactly is also asmita, right? So when that distinction is seen, that is viveka khyati. Okay? So that sattva purushanyata khyatihi sukshma prajna. What is the nature of the prajna? It is subtle. The sort of the subtlest of the subtle. So sukshma prajna samaptadikara. So the adhikara, the role, the purpose of the prajna is accomplished. So that is samaptadikara. When the purpose is accomplished, there is no further existence. So pratiprasavaya kalpishyate. So what happens is, once the purpose is accomplished, the complete understanding has happened, it starts bringing forth the pratiprasava. Because like we saw in Sankhya Yoga, things evolve out of Prakriti because of the influence of the Purusha. Right? So the Chitta sort of evolved out of the fundamental Prakriti. Through that we have seen the process of evolution. Pratiprasava is to go back. So that evolution stops and it goes back to its original state of Mula Prakriti. So pratiprasavaya kalpishyate. Okay, so why does that happen? Because it is samaptadikara. So the purpose and the activity of the prajna is complete. Once you get the sattva purusha anyata khyatihi, of what type? Which is kleshaihi aparamrishta, no longer touched by kleshas. So now begins the process of pratiprasava, which will lead to the chitta dissolving back into prakriti, and purusha reaches the kaivalya state. Right? So that is the sort of the extent of when we say samadhi bhavanarthaha klesha tanukaranarthascha. And we'll learn more about the klesha tanukaranam when we really understand what is klesha. That has not yet been defined, but we have given the clue that it is related to avidya, and we'll see that in detail in the subsequent sutras. So there is one clarification in Yoga Vartika as to why this topic did not come in the first chapter, right? So, Uttamadhikarinascha. So, the first chapter, as we have seen, is about the Uttamadhikari. This is about the Madhyamadhikari, right? So, the highest of the highest is the first chapter. So, Uttamadhikarinascha Samadhi Yogyata Kleshatanuta cha Siddhaiva. Okay? So, it is given that the Uttamadhikari yogi, he has Samadhi Yogyata. He is already qualified for Samadhi. And Klesha Tanuta. The Kleshas are already made Tanu. They have already been attenuated. So there the primary means are Abhyasa and Vairagya with Ishvara Pranidhanam that had come. In this case, the Kriya Yogi is a middle level. So the Klesha Tanuta is in progress. Samadhi qualification is being built. And therefore it is coming here. So there it is Siddhaiva Ataha Purvapade Tad Ubayam Yoga Sadhanataya Noktam. So in the previous chapter, okay, these were not mentioned, okay, as a sadhana, as a means for yoga, because those means are no longer necessary as far as that particular stage of the yogi is concerned. Whereas here, for somebody who is embarking on Kriya Yoga, these are the means to sort of accomplish the Kriya Yoga.
So, the Kriya Yoga has two functions. One is Samadhi Bhavanartha. That means potentials of Samadhi is there. It has to be actualized. It has to be actualized. And the way to actualize is the Kriya Yoga. Because of Kriya Yoga, his Samadhi gets actualized. Your relaxation gets actualized by getting into Shavasana. Your relaxation gets actualized, sublimity gets actualized by going to Viprit Karni, Janu Shirshasana, Setubandha Sarvangasana. Your quietude gets actualized. And we don't go beyond it. For years, some of you have experienced, after your Shavasana, you feel relaxed. Every time after relaxation, you feel relaxed. But there's a limitation, you don't go beyond. You might become even sublime. But then, for years and years, we have not gone beyond it. Every time we become sublime, last time, as I said, subsequently we are like dog's tail. Subsequently, we are back to square one. Is that right? It is because we have not adopted the higher means. We are in the same means. Feeling uncomfortable, Viprit Karni. Uncomfortable, do some Viloma 2, some Ujjayi Pranayam, some Nadishodhan Pranayam. So we overcome symptomatic conditions, but again, what happens? In no time, we are back to square one. And in order to get out of this barrier, we need to adhere to next means. Otherwise, we'll be every time in the same. We'll continue to do 100 years of our Viprit Karni, we will be back to square one. We don't make a big progress. Now, how is this explained? Suppose I am in kindergarten, in Bal Bharati number 1. In your countries, it might be Radiant Reader number 1, which is taught at the first level. Now, suppose I am reading the Radiant Reader number 1 or Bal Bharati number 1, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, 50 years. How far will I progress? I will have to go to Bal Bharati 2, Bal Bharati 3, Bal Bharati 4. Is that right? I can't be stuck in one text and say that I am going to be becoming proficient, profound here, and therefore I am going to practice for tens of years. How much will my English improve if I am in Bal Bharati 1 for 20 years? There is a limit. How much my English will improve by Bal Bharati 1 or Radiant Reader number 1? To improve my English, I will have to go to Radiant Reader number 2. To further improve, I will have to go to Radiant Reader number 3. So Bal Bharati number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. I will have to embrace the higher means or step on to higher means, then only my English will improve. So if you are going to do 20, 30, 40, 50 years Shirshasana to Viprit and Karni, and then our Nadi Shodhan, our Surya Bedan, our Chandra Bedan, unless we adhere to next step of it, we are not going to improve. There is a limit to our improvement. And therefore there are different hierarchies in yoga. So therefore from Ashtanga Yoga there is a next hierarchy, which is Kriya Yoga. And then from Kriya Yoga there is next hierarchy, which is called Samadhi Yoga of the first chapter. So there are different hierarchies. Now in this hierarchy, in our hierarchy we are not fighting kleshas. We are only fighting klesha vruttis. Patanjali will be soon telling us about klesha and klesha vrutti. Dhyana heyaha tadvruttayaha. Our ego is not a problem. Ego creates a problem. Our ignorance is not a problem, but ignorance can create a problem. So we are not really countering kleshas by our practices. We are only countering klesha vruttis by our asana, pranayam, dharana, dhyan, samadhi. We are only countering klesha vruttis. We are not countering kleshas. We are not trying to terminate our avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. We are only trying to have measures taken when they are creating a problem. When avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha are sufficiently augmented, escalated, they create a problem. You and me are already infected with some bacteria. No one here is not without a bacteria within our embodiment. But then what happens? When that bacteria starts creating symptoms on us, then we go for antibiotics. Is that right? Because as it is, we are inhaling the breath, so some bacteria are definitely entering in. We are eating food, bacteria are entering in, and that's why we have that called of immunity, which is fighting. And when immunity, the white cells have won the battle, we don't have disease. If the white cells lose the battle, we have a disease. Is that right? So it is not that we are without any bacteria within us. Our eyes are open, mouth is open, nose are open, nostrils are open. What is the chance that bacteria won't enter? They are entering. But then there is a battle going on, and as long as the white cells are winning the battle, we don't get infected symptomatically. When they lose the battle, then we get fever, we get symptoms, and then we go for antibiotics. So the kleshas are very much within us. They are not creating every time problem. Sometimes they create problem. We will come to know that actually we are the ones who are relishing kleshas. The kleshas is not afflictions. In English they render as afflictions. It is not affliction. It is a technical term. We are enjoying kleshas like chocolates. If you eat a lot of chocolates, then you get a problem. Is that right? Until then you have no problem. Until then you relish the chocolates. But there is a condition that if you have overeaten chocolates, it's going to create some problem. But we don't understand chocolate is a problem. Only overeating chocolate is a problem. So we are all relishing kleshas. Somebody says you are a wonderful person, our ego is nourished, we are happy. Actually our ego is nourished. You are a great person, you are a wonderful person, no one is like you, you are the best person, you are wisest of person, you are best in conduct. Our ego is nourished. Now nourishing ego is a problem. We don't understand this. We relish it. So a Kriya Yogi comes to understand that we are all subsumed by kleshas and they are really creating problems. Now avidya is not creating any problem to you and me, is that right? Where is the problem with avidya? Because of avidya we are able to enjoy our life. But it's the caliber of a yogi where he understands this avidya is a problem. That's why they are kleshas. It is only to madhyamadhikari they are kleshas. For you and me, the klesha vrittis may create problem. Chocolate is not a problem, but eating too much of it is a problem. Is that right? But then if you go by inquiry, you will say chocolate itself is a problem. Therefore, it is potentially a problem. Therefore, overeating of it creates escalated problem. So Kriya Yogi knows chocolate is a problem. You and me only think too much of chocolate is a problem. That's the difference between you and me and a Kriya Yogi. Kriya Yogi is a wiser person. So therefore, he is dreaded of kleshas. We are not still dreaded of kleshas because we are still enjoying kleshas. Because of kleshas, we can have happiness. Sukha nishai ragaha. We don't want attachment, but we want sukha. Is that right? Is there anyone who says, I don't want delights? But then what follows delights is a klesha, which only a Kriya Yogi understands that I should not go after delights because delights are nurturing, nourishing raga. And raga is a problem. Attachment is a problem. But we don't wean ourselves away from delights. We want to enjoy delights, but only we have to see, we see that I don't get attached to it, perhaps. But still we are going after delights. No one says, I'm going to banish all delight from my life. I'm not going to allow any delight to enter my mind. No, we want to have delights entering. But too much of it is going to create problem, which is not our realization. That is realization of a Kriya Yogi. Therefore, he keeps away from delights and sorrows both. He knows both are creating problems. Attachment, aversion. Sukha raga, dukha dvesha. So he knows both have potentials of problems. So that's why he keeps away from delights and sorrows both. You and me go after it. Only we know that too much of it is going to create problems. So we will see, I will not overeat ice cream, I will not overeat chocolates. Now who is going to decide what is overeating and what is not overeating? So that's how our life is. But here he starts looking at problems which are in the form of kleshas. We have no problem in the form of kleshas. We only perhaps encounter problem with klesha vritti. What are klesha vrittis? Kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya. When we are having these fevers, then we suffer, definitely suffer. Kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya, when we are afflicted by them, our afflictions are kama, krodhadis. Yogi's afflictions are avidya, asmitadis. So swollen avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, videsha, swollen, edema means kama, krodha, lobha, moha, mada, matsarya. Those are klesha vrittis. We are trying to fight against klesha vrittis if we are sane people. If we are not sane, we will again embrace them, we will consume them. If we are insane, we will consume kama krodhadi, we will nurture them, we will nourish them, we will fatten them. But if we are wise, we will take care. So understand our hierarchy. We will be trying to fight klesha vrittis. Kriya Yogi is fighting kleshas itself. Klesha tanukaranam. We don't want edema. We don't want swelling. And therefore we take care. So kama krodhadis are swelling of kleshas. And then they are attenuated in Kriya Yoga. So that's why I have used the term anti-kleshotics. Antibiotics to counter infections, anti-kleshotics to counter avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha. So they are taking anti-kleshotics. Samadhi bhavanartha klesha tanukaranarthascha. And we are relishing kleshas because of our ignorance. Okay.
So what happens if that is not done, right? So in Tattva Vaisharadi it says, Kleshanam atanavehi balavad virodhigrasta sattva purushanyata khyatir udetumeva notsahate. So if the kleshas are not attenuated, balavat, they are so strong that the prajna that is required, the sattva purushanyata khyati, udetum eva notsahate. So it will not even think about rising. The spurring required for that to rise, that prajna to rise, that will never happen because the kleshas will come and obstruct that right at the beginning. And therefore the kleshatanukaranam is essential. Now if you look at Guruji's book, he has beautifully showed how the Kriya Yoga, the Ashtanga Yoga and the precepts of the Bhagavad Gita are sort of an integrated whole. And there is a sort of a diagram, a figure that shows that. At the top there is the Kriya Yoga with Tapasvadhyaya, Ishvara Pranidhana, and the limbs of the Ashtanga Yoga are put under that. Right? So the Yama Niyama, Asana Pranayama are associated with Tapa. Okay? So Pratyahara Dharana with Swadhyaya and Dharana Dhyana Samadhi with Ishvara Pranidhana. Okay? So this also gives you the approach of Guruji's whole life and practice in the context of a full understanding of Ashtanga Yoga, Kriya Yoga and Samadhi Yoga, and how he has been able to inculcate Tapa, Swadhyaya, Ishvara Pranidhana in his practice, and how he is sort of presenting it there.
See, if you have heard, many times Guruji has said that you all practice yoga, I live yoga. What's the difference? You all practice yoga, so 1 hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 5 hours, oh, I am very serious about yoga. What? I practice every 5 hours. So Guruji used to say that I live yoga and you only practice yoga. Then what's the difference? Why does he do whatever he does? If he's living by that, why he does Shirshasana, Sarvangasana? A totally different reason. Why we do? Because we are practicing, therefore we have to do Shirshasana, Sarvangasana. So the purpose, the psychodynamics behind why he practiced Shirshasana, etc., and why we practice Shirshasana, etc., totally different. Because he is accomplished compared to us. So why he did all that was totally different than why you and me do. Because if we don't do it, we feel withdrawal symptoms. So therefore we are not comfortable, so we have to practice every day. So some of us have got addicted to it. Because if you don't practice, you are not comfortable. Like case of withdrawal symptoms for those who are addicted. So we should know we are addicted. That was not his case. That was his life. He lived in yoga. And that's why we don't want to miss practice. Because if you miss practice, we don't feel comfortable. Now that's not a good condition. We'll have to come out of this grip. That I don't feel fine, therefore I practice. It's not good psychodynamics. I don't feel fine if I don't practice, therefore I don't miss practice. It's not good psychodynamics. There is a better psychodynamics than why somebody might practice. So Guruji said, I live yoga. And therefore what he did was totally different dynamics than our practices of yoga, which we do for 3, 4, 5 hours at the most, or 2, 3 hours, or 45 minutes, or 20 minutes. Because some of us we embrace 20 minutes workout every day. And then we are complacent. I never miss my yoga. 20 minutes I never miss. So they live. Kriya yogis, that's why I said they live Jnana, Karma, Dhyana, Bhakti. A totally different psychodynamics, different dynamics of yoga. Unlike our dynamics of yoga.
And once, just like it is associated with Tapa, Swadhyaya, Ishvara Pranidhana, as Guruji has associated the Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama with them, he also associates that with the Karma Marga, Jnana Marga and Bhakti Marga, which brings to Bhagavad Gita. And those who know him could see the whole substrate of the Tapa, Swadhyaya, Ishvara Pranidhana and Karma Yoga, Jnana Yoga, Bhakti Yoga in his practices. And with this background, hopefully we will better understand his statements like body is my temple, asanas are my prayers, and so on. Until that point, it is just like a nice line, right? But once you have this whole background of these texts and the understanding of how his life is modeled around that, then we understand what, when he says that, the depth of meaning behind that line, right? And what are the shades of meaning to be understood there. Okay. So the next sutra is going to start with, firstly, listing the kleshas, right? After that, there is a life cycle of kleshas. Okay, so even before we start understanding the individual kleshas like avidya and so on, we need to understand kleshas in general, without the further differentiation. So what are kleshas, the 5 types, and what is the life cycle that kleshas goes through? After that, we will start learning what are the individual kleshas, which is avidya, asmita, raga, dvesha, abhinivesha. Which then brings in, like he had said, in the second chapter, there is a whole concept of jnana that comes in. Because once we start understanding avidya, we, by sort of complementarity, we start understanding the vidya. And that gives the jnana, which has been essentially sort of brought into the Patanjali Yoga Sutra through means of yoga, rather than a separate theoretical background as an explanation. So that we'll see as we go further. So I think we'll stop here, because almost close to an hour, and we'll start the third sutra next time, in the next session. Yeah, so that, one thing I could say, so when we talked about Guruji and his approach of how we brought in the practices of yoga in the context of jnana, karma and bhakti yoga and the tapasvadaya, Ishvara pranidhana. So there is one discussion in one of the Upanishads which talks about jnana and yoga, which we saw already, right? The jnana and the yoga, and how one without the other is not useful. Then there is a discussion about which one to begin with, right? So it says yoga abhyasa eva prathama krityam, right? So the yoga abhyasa is sort of the first stage, and that is how it is to be begun. And it says shuddhe chetasi tasyaiva smatva jnanam prakashate tasma jnanam bhaved yogat janme ke naiva padmaja. So it says once the chitta is shuddha, purified, the svatma jnanam shines on its own, right? So the yoga gives birth to jnana. This is different from jnana through reading of texts and from shravana and so on. So the practice itself gives birth and rise to jnanam. Tasmat yogam tame vadau. Adau means in the beginning. Okay. So therefore yoga is the starting point. Sadhako nityam abhyaset. So the nitya abhyasa, the constant practice of yoga, therefore is to be done first. Right? Mumukshubhi pranajaya kartavyo moksha hetave. So the pranajaya is something we'll have to see later when we come to the ashtanga and the pranayama and so on. But the pranajaya is essential. Therefore, starting with yoga abhyasa is essential in one's journey towards moksha. And that again emphasizes Guruji's approach to the yoga, which encompasses the philosophy as well, right? But you might see that the emphasis more is on the practice, but now we understand how that comes about and why that comes about. Okay. So let's recite the shlokas on Guruji. Vaijñānika shikshakatve
वैज्ञानिक शिक्षकत्वे
कलाकार आसनेषु यः
कलाकार आसनेषु यः
योगाभ्यासे च तत्त्वज्ञः
योगाभ्यासे च तत्त्वज्ञः
तं वन्दे सुन्दरं गुरुं
तं वन्दे सुन्दरं गुरुं
योगवृक्षो लोकेऽस्मिन्
योगवृक्षो लोकेऽस्मिन्
वर्धितो यस्य प्रेरणया
वर्धितो यस्य प्रेरणया
योगाचार्याय गुरवे
योगाचार्याय गुरवे
सुन्दराय नमो नमः
सुन्दराय नमो नमः.
We could take a question or two if there is any.
When you just said that we get into a situation where when we are doing yoga, suppose we are not doing yoga, you feel oh, you know, you've missed something. But is there a way, like in one of your books you have written that the one which I had read on pranayam, that pranayam happens on you. It's not that you are doing pranayam. So like that, when you are doing asanas, okay, initially it is that you're doing it because you're missing it because you're not doing it and you need to do it. But as your practice ripens, it just starts happening and then you just get into it. So I just wanted to have that clarity.
Yes, the dynamics of yoga are such. Yoga is not done. Yoga happens. For that to happen, you do have to do something. Say, if our meeting has to happen, something has to be done at some point in time, and then the happenings will take place. Now say, what is this yoga? Should you be doing yoga? Or you want the yoga to be done on you? Should you be doing yoga, or you want yoga to happen on you? So actually you want the yoga to happen on you. For it to happen on you, you will have to do something incidentally. If you don't do at all, if you just sit in one place and I'm waiting for yoga to happen. Now you want to meet me and you stay back at your home. What is the chance that I will visit your house? When will you meet me? So if you want the things to happen, so you have to know what are probabilities. There is less chance that Prashant will come to my house, and there will be more probability if I go to his house, of probability of meeting him. So you'll have to do something. It's not that you shouldn't have to do nothing and it will happen. So something has to be done, but that is incidental. So yoga has to happen on you, you say. In the beginning we want to do yoga. This is the case of a raw beginner. He wants to do yoga because there is everything to be done. But then when you know what is yoga, you want your mind to become quiet. You want the mind to become pure. That means yoga must work on you. So you doing Shirshasana is one thing. That is when you are just learning it, or not learned and about to learn and you are learning it. You want to do Shirshasana. But later, you want Shirshasana to happen on you. Is that right? It doesn't occur to a raw beginner that Shirshasana should happen. He cannot do, therefore he says, I want to get it. I want to get it. I want to get it. Having got, then what? You want the Shirshasana to do something on you. It must happen on you. And therefore, you will understand yoga is all more, you are looking for a happening. You are doing it incidental. You came here, you made it a point to come here, that was your doing. Having come here, if you heard us and you got to know something, it happened on you. If you had not come here, this would not have happened. Not having come here, if you got something from us, this would not have happened. So you have to do something, that is to come here. Get up in the morning and come here. But then is that the material cause for you to get what you got here? No. It has to happen. So yoga happens. And that's why dynamics I have explained many times. Body, mind, breath, senses, organs must interact in yoga. In your asanas, they must interact. Then what is your role? You must see their interactions. So sometimes I will give example. Two children are playing. Two children are playing. Now if you interfere, the children will be influenced and they will draw you, or they will get onto your laps. Then what? You want to be at a distance and watch the children play. If they are playing wonderfully fine, then you don't want to interfere. If it ends up in some bout or fight, then you will go in and please say, don't fight. But as long as they are playing, if you get in there, you spoil their play. because they will start playing with you, or they will want you to play with them. So when the children are playing, you must be a witness. Similarly, it comes in yoga. You should not interfere. You have to interfere when there is untoward thing is happening. If the untoward thing is not happening, two children are playing well, playing and laughing and enjoying, why do you interfere? Don't go close to them also. From a distance, watch them. So when the yoga is happening, body, mind, breath interact, and they are interacting well, you should be watching, you should be observing, you should be witnessing. Don't interfere. If you interfere, their interaction will be spoiled. If the children do not know that nobody is watching them, they will have freedom to play. But if they come to know that they are being watched, then that will put a restriction on their freedom. Like today, these days we say, you are being monitored by surveillance by CCTV cameras. Then you are a little cautious about, oh, there's a CCTV camera here, I should be cautious. But if you know that there is nothing like CCTV, then you have freedom. So, if you are like CCTV camera, and you make a revelation that there is a camera here, you are on camera, then you are a little cautious. If you say you are on camera, oh mind, you are on camera, the mind will pretend. You don't want the mind to pretend. So, in yogic dynamics, understand your subjective entity is its role. It should not dabble, interfere unless it is necessary. Sakshi bhava or observation. Let me observe. Let me be seer. Let me be observer rather than an agent there. So you are not agent in dynamics of yoga after a level. Until that you are an agent. So that's how the dynamics of yoga are. So yoga happens. Asana pranayam happens. If the things are wonderful, on a day you get wonderful asana. You don't say, I did wonderful asana, then that's not really the good condition, proper condition. Asana should happen. I did well, means you are agent. But today asanas happened well, that means there were some other factors which were having importance, and therefore your asana was exalted on that day. So doing and a good thing, happening and a good thing, there is a big difference. If happen is a good thing, you are lucky. Having done, if you are done, you say, you take credit, I did and I got it. Where is the luck there? But then, if you are lucky, you are more happy. Is that right? Why? Things happen. So yoga is more of the nature of happenings. I have said your doing is like a kickstarter. If you don't kickstart your vehicle, if you don't operate the starter of the car is not going to run. But once the car is running, you don't dabble with the starter. You don't take your hand to the starter again. The car has started. However, the car has to be started. So similarly, we have starter aspects in yoga. Once it is started, don't dabble. If the car is running, don't interfere with it. Don't touch even the starter. Operate the starter, see what happens. You will spoil your car. So you have to do, that is only a starter. Kickstart your yoga. Then there should be automotion, like a vehicle. Kickstart a vehicle, there should be automotion there subsequently.
Okay. All right. Thank you.